This ESPN podcast is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't
The
care.
BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report, Monday morning here in Southern California. Just a programming note, part 2 of the trade value column that I was working on is not running on Monday. It's now going to run on Tuesday, even though I thought it was going to be Thursday. I'm pushing for Tuesday. We're going to have a big day. Me and Zach Lowe, big NBA columns on Grantland. Zach Lowe here right now. We're going to talk about round 1 of the playoffs. The home team's 8-0. Zach, are we going to get a game 7 in this round 1?
Oof, I hope so, but some of the possible game 7s took some hits. I mean, Chicago looked awful in Brooklyn. People thought that would be a competitive series. Memphis wilted down the stretch against the Clippers. David Lee's injury is a killer, and the Lakers, who I thought would give San Antonio a 7-game series, or at least that was my prediction, just couldn't score the ball. And it's easy to overreact to these game 1s, home team blowouts, et cetera. It's a long series, but certainly there was not a lot of encouraging signs for game 7s.
Yeah, the rule is usually the home team wins game 1. Game 2 is the close game. But, you go down the line, like Nuggets Warriors, I thought had a chance to go 7. David Lee, and the Warriors were on pace to probably steal that game or come damn close, which they almost did anyway. But, they lose David Lee, and then they lose game 1 in an agonizing way, especially like they're down 1 with the ball with 50 seconds left. Big turnover, give up a 2. They get the lucky 3 coming back, and then the professor comes in and finishes them off. But I look at that game, and it's like now in my mind, they have to win 5 of 7, basically, because you almost have to count that game 1 as a pseudo win. And I don't think they're good enough to win 4 or 6 against Denver without Lee. You agree?
Yeah, I had Denver in 5 as my prediction, and I thought it would be a competitive 5-game series. A 7-game series wouldn't surprise me, but winning in Denver is just so hard. Not as hard in the playoffs, obviously, without back-to-backs and stuff. And again, they had that game. I mean, that game was theirs for the taking, and they didn't win it. And those when you're the underdog are especially painful. And I think Boston's loss in New York was similar, a game that a lot of things went right for Boston. Some things didn't go right, but enough went right for them to win, and they didn't win.
Yeah, I was thinking about whether that fit my theory. I think in those first 2 games, you're going to have the one that you have the chance to win, and you really can't blow it. And it's also just about impossible to win the series if you blow both of the first 2 on the road. But the one thing I will say about that Celtic game, they're up 70-63 with about 13 minutes left and blew it. And the Knicks just took over from there. But I thought there were some encouraging signs from the game, because I think each of those games are going to play out the way that one played out. They're going to give Carmelo his 30 shots and his 8 to 10 free throw attempts. JR is going to get his 16 to 20, and they're just going to try to take out everyone else, which is what they did. The reason they lost that game was because the bench betrayed them. I don't think, even though Jason Terry has been so spotty this season, and that's being kind, I don't see their bench getting shut out in the field goal department in every game this series. If they get, what do you think, 15 points from the bench per game, this could go 7. Am I being too optimistic?
No, you're not being optimistic. In fact, one of the things I'm going to write for tomorrow is that the Celtics did a lot of good things in that game. They did a lot of really crappy things, like throw the ball to Jason Kidd seemingly 7 times in a row down the stretch of that game.
Yeah.
But they missed a lot of good looks that they got by working the ball to Pierce in the post on mismatches. Because if the Knicks aren't guarding with Melo, he has a mismatch. And they drew help, and they kicked, and they swung the ball ahead of the double teams. And like Lee missed a couple of corner threes, Bradley missed a couple of corner threes, Jet missed every shot he took. A couple of those shots fall, and the game is a different game. Look, Boston played a horrible offensive game, but they missed some looks where you thought they understand how to attack this defense. They understand where its weak spots are. And if their defense is there every game, which during the KG era it essentially has been, they can win a couple of games playing almost that way, hit a few shots, don't have the dumbass turnovers late in the game. There's a formula there. Now, can they play defense like that every game? I would hope so, but New York is a very good offensive team.
The way the first three quarters of that game went, they should have been up by 12-15. And they threw away. So like Avery Bradley had those 3 killer turnovers.
They couldn't enter the ball. They couldn't throw an entry pass.
Lee missed open jumpers. Terry missed every shot he took.
Lee saved the ball. Lee saved the ball underneath their basket.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of things went, and they got an unbelievable Jeff Green first half, which usually when he plays like that, the Celtics are going to win or come damn close. I look at it from the perspective of, they know that Knicks team really well. They knew exactly how to play them. That game went exactly how they wanted it to go, and they just didn't play well offensively. I think in game 2, if the game has the same beats, they're going to win or come close. And I said this on TV yesterday. I think the way they're defending Carmelo, he's going to have a 50-point game in this series, because clearly they're doing the 2010 Game 7 Kobe blueprint here. Just, you keep shooting, Carmelo. We're worried about everyone else. We know you're going to get your points. Go ahead, take them. I agree with that philosophy. Did you agree with that?
Well, the interesting thing is they're doing that in the sense that they're not trapping him or hard doubling him, but they're doing the Thibodeau thing where they're sliding the extra defender over from the weak side to the strong side to at least like be in Melo's line of vision. And they're doing that with the hope that he essentially just sort of dribbles into that help and takes a pull-up jump shot instead of passing or posting up and passing and all that. And he in every game this season that they've played, maybe with one exception, he's basically taken that bait and taken a bunch of really tough shots into that help. So I don't know if they're somewhere in between, just sort of giving him his and hard trapping him and stuff, but it's worked. And, I said on Twitter, they contained Melo. Melo had 36 points, and I think the Celtics, I agree with you, they would take that. A couple of threes that he got via sloppy transition defense where they didn't find him with the right matchup, or they some other transition error left him open. Other than that, I think they were happy with the way they defended him.
He had 36 points on 29 shots, which is a great ratio, and you take that every time. I think the difference between how they defended him in game 1 and what they did to Kobe in 2010. And Kobe, they were just sending the second guy at him, and they were hoping that he wanted to be the hero of that game so badly that he'd try to make plays with 2 guys defending him, which he did for 3 quarters. He just couldn't make the right play. And then finally they kind of pulled him back in the fold. With Carmelo, as you said, they weren't doubling him. They weren't sending the second guy flying at him. They're guarding him one-on-one, but with the second guy shading over, and they're basically hoping that he'd keep shooting, which is what he did, because he's in such a zone right now. If he sees one guy in front of him, he's going to try to take that guy and do the pull-up jumper every time. So, the other part of that is if he's going to shoot 30 times, J.R. Smith's going to want his 16 to 18. So JR took 5 or 6, even for him, horrendous shots. But you know what killed them in that game? The random 28 minutes from Kenyon Martin, who out Tyson Chandler in that game. If he doesn't do that, the Celtics win that game, even the way they played offensively.
Well, that's the thing. And then the Knicks, Kenyon Martin has been a great signing for them, and he played very well in game 1. The Knicks need Tyson Chandler to be Tyson Chandler, probably to win this series, and definitely to do any damage in the playoffs, because Kenyon Martin is not going to give you 30 minutes a game, without breaking down at some point. So Chandler's health and his condition and his ability to play at peak level is a huge story. But yeah, I generally agree with you. I thought the Celtics played a totally winnable game. And look, we know this team. Their offense stinks. Their defense is awesome. And they just need the defense to continue to be awesome and the offense to stink a little bit less. And that's been a winning formula for them, at least until they meet Miami in the playoffs. If they do it here, we'll see what happens.
They can win in Boston against this Knicks team if Pierce isn't shooting the ball well, but at MSG, I don't think that's happening. And he got good shots in that game and just wasn't making them. And it was one of those games you always, just knowing his history, especially in MSG, kept waiting for him to catch fire. And he just never did. And as you said earlier, Jason Kidd, was a big help in that game. I don't totally understand why they started Copeland. As a Celtics fan, I was glad they did. And maybe they're trying to manage Kidd's minutes to some degree, but I thought he had a huge impact in that game. And it's funny, you think it's a mismatch with him and Pierce, but he's so crafty and has ways of just kind of steering people kind of toward where he wants them to shoot. Again, the most underrated free agent signing of that whole summer. You know, you think about, like, had he stayed in Dallas and had Darren Williams gone to Dallas the way Darren Williams is playing now, the Mavericks are totally different, in a totally different situation. Kenyon Martin, quickly, his reputation coming off that Clippers season last year was so bad, and he had such a reputation as a locker room cancer that teams shied away from him for 50 solid games. He had such a bad reputation from that Clippers experience that nobody signed him for 50 games. Same thing for Chris Anderson in Miami. Do you think, I mean, you need a little luck with that stuff, but is anybody kicking themselves right now that those two guys just were kind of sitting there and nobody got them?
Absolutely. I think probably Anderson even more than Martin, in terms of, Anderson had all these amorphous legal problems in Denver that appear to have turned out to have been BS, at least in terms of his culpability. And he's been better than Udonis Haslem. He has fit in there sensationally. He's perfect for their system. And, I don't think anyone ever thought he was like a bad guy. I just think people were like, we don't really know what's going on in his life, blah, blah, blah. Kenyon Martin, as you said, people thought was basically a crazy lunatic and maybe a bad locker room guy. And that there are teams that just won't sign guys like that. There are teams that just won't even sign a guy like J.R. Smith. So that's sort of understandable. But yeah, Birdman in Miami has been really, really good. It even has surprised me with how good he's been.
Yeah, I guess the parallel would be when the Bulls got Bison Dele on their second back-to-back in 97. And he just, for whatever reason, gave them that little bump they needed. And the 18 minutes a game Anderson's given them are spectacular. It's like everything you'd want from your backup big guy. We mentioned Chandler earlier, how he doesn't look right. I really think it looks like something's wrong with him, and we'll probably find out after the season, like exactly how badly he's hurt. Noah, who gamely tried to play game one with the plantar fasciitis, just looked like he was 40%. And I went from thinking Chicago is either going to win this series or come damn close because of their defense and because they're tough and all that stuff. I genuinely think this is going to be a sweep. I don't think they can win a game if Noah looks like that. They're not going to score enough offense, and they have nobody else to guard Brook Lopez. What do you expect from that series?
I think they'll get a game, maybe two in there somewhere. I mean, they're the Bulls. They're tough. They're going to play good defense. They beat the Nets a couple of times without Noah, or at least once I remember late in the season without Noah. And all the games were close, and he had missed one of the other games. They're Chicago. They'll play hard. But, yeah, I mean, it reminded me of last year in Philly when I think he sprained his ankle, or I don't remember what he did, and he tried to play through it, and he was like limp running up and down the court, and you were just like, he literally cannot be on the court. Even Tibbs has to realize that, and that's what he looked like a little bit in game one. And, yeah, I mean, I picked Nets in 7, and that was by way of sort of throwing my hands up in the air saying I have no idea what Noah's condition is like. I have a hunch based on what they're saying that he's not near 100%, and if that's the case, I think the Nets will win. If I had known he was going to look like that, Nets in 5, Nets in 6 would have been a more reasonable prediction. But, yeah, I mean, look, the Bulls can't score, and if they don't have his passing and his defense, they're not the Bulls anymore. They're something else.
The other, if I had known ... performance was Manu Ginobili, who, as it turns out, Popovich pulled a total Belichick. Manu was 100%. He looked great and totally raised the ceiling of that Spurs team. Now, everybody, the line on that series dropped. I think the Spurs were like minus 1,200 to win that series at one point. And by game one, it dropped to like minus 600. And there was so much action on the Lakers, and so many people were thinking they had a chance, and Magic picked them on our show. And then you watch Manu play for 5 minutes and you're like, oh boy. Oh, they did it again. They roped us in. So Oklahoma City, San Antonio is now, I'd be shocked if it didn't happen. What do you think?
We got to see it from Manu over the long haul. I mean, he does this where he comes back, he looks great, then he faces a tougher defender or something, and he shoots 35% for the next 3 or 4 games. I mean, I agree. He looked great. It was fun to see him. I love Manu. He's one of my favorite players ever. Am I ready to pencil them into the conference finals? I can see why it's tempting, given that Denver is missing Gallo and Fareed so far anyway. And that would be their second round opponent. So, I can see that. And certainly the Lakers did not look like a team that is going to be able to muster enough points to make this a competitive series. And I can see that. With Manu, I'm cautious.
I'm always naturally aggressive and you're naturally cautious with these things. So I'm not surprised we fell in.
Especially with Manu. He's a favorite of mine just for his style and the way he plays and his unpredictability. Yeah. I just think he's a genius, and I just sort of cross my fingers with him that he's okay, because he looked great in the playoffs last year. Then he ran into Oklahoma City. He couldn't do anything against that team. Now that was more about Oklahoma City, I think, than him. But
and James Harden. Yeah. Well, here's the part. The key part for me was San Antonio. They fall to number 2, and I hate when teams don't go for the number 1 seed. But in this case, they got a lot of rest. They ended up with a Lakers matchup and no Kobe and that whole thing, which, I think has turned out to be fortuitous. Then in round 2, they get the winner at Denver Golden State. So you either have a banged up Denver team that's missing Gallo and who knows what we're getting from Fareed, or you get Golden State without David Lee. Either way, I would much rather have either of those matchups than the Clippers. So, the Clippers are the giant X factor of the West. I am not a believer, but I've also been to probably too many games in person, and I'm probably overrating some of their weaknesses. Are you a believer?
I like that you've already penciled in the Clippers, by the way, as they're getting out of the first round. I don't know what I am a believer in the Clippers. I think they're a very good team. I don't know if I believe in them to the extent that they're a threat to beat Oklahoma City 4 times, including at least once on the road. But I do think they're a good team. And what we saw over the weekend from them was just a reminder that Chris Paul has a playoff gear. And it's fair to ask whether he can keep it up for the entire postseason as long as they're alive, because he couldn't last year. But that was a different player than we saw for most of the season. And as long as they have him and they have Griffin and they get something from 2 of their secondary players, doesn't even matter which ones. In game 1, it was Caron Butler had a big game for them. If they get something out of those guys, they're going to be in there with any team. I guess I'm a Clips believer. I don't know if I think they can win the title, but they may very well be the second best team in the Western Conference.
Chris is in much better condition than he was last spring. They have the monkey wrench now of you never know when you're getting that random red hot Jamal Crawford game, because it'll happen once a series. In this Memphis series, it's actually good for them because they have to play DeAndre Jordan more minutes, which I thought they should have been doing anyway. I just think he's a better fit for them than Lamar Odom. The big epiphany I had as I watched game 1, I try not to overreact to game 1s, but it was clear Chris had that extra gear, as you mentioned. And man, Memphis, it's one thing to rely on the team they had in the regular season. I still defend the Rudy Gay trade. I thought it was the right move. I don't think Rudy Gay is going to ultimately make a difference in this series, but they're relying on guys like Jared Bayless like a little too much, and it's so hard for them to get that perimeter scoring when the crowd's into it and they need a basket and you could just pack down low. I think it's really hard for them to score. And now that they have to win 4 of 6, basically, including game 7 on the road, I thought they had to steal game 1. Are you a believer in the have to steal game 1 theory?
No, I think they could go back and steal game 2. I mean, I think, look, Memphis's offense is average at best and bad at worst. We know that. I thought that the 2 early fouls on Randolph really changed the game because it not only took him out of the game before he could get in any sort of rhythm, it brought Ed Davis in, and immediately they had to double, on Blake Griffin when Ed Davis was guarding him. They gave up an open three. And the other thing, you mentioned Bayless, the degree to which Memphis is just terrified of Eric Bledsoe is like shocking. And I know the results have been really bad for Mike Conley whenever Bledsoe's on the floor, but that plus foul trouble kept Conley off the floor for a long time. And then when they brought him back, they were just like, we're going to stick you off the ball and make Jared Bayless our point guard, because we are just petrified of even having the ball anywhere near Eric Bledsoe. It's really, he's become like, we may forget Eric Bledsoe like 30 years from now, and people in Memphis are still going to be talking about Eric Bledsoe like 50 years from now.
And ironically, he didn't play nearly enough minutes in game one. And, this is the one of the Achilles heels for this Clippers team going forward is just how do you manage those minutes? Chauncey had a good game one, and it's one of those things like Chauncey having a good game one, I'm not sure is necessarily good for them long term, because next round they have to play Oklahoma City, and that's not the series for Chauncey Billups. That's an Eric Bledsoe series. That's when you need his athleticism. You need him to be going mano a mano with Russell Westbrook. And if it were up to me, I would be giving Bledsoe those minutes now and getting him that experience, because they need him to beat Oklahoma City. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we saw them, the little intriguing window into that. And I agree. Look, people are going to rip Vinny. Vinny and Lionel Hollins are both in the same boat where, like, no matter what they do, people are going to rip them. Tony Allen didn't play enough. Eric Bledsoe didn't play enough. It's just like the knee jerk. You don't even have to watch the game.
Right.
But it's tough for him with Crawford, Billups, Bledsoe, Paul. That's a lot. And like Barnes and Butler, that's 6 wing guys we just named that have to play. Yeah. And that's difficult for any coach. The one little window that we saw that might be something they would use against Oklahoma City is just for a couple minutes, they went small with Butler at power forward. And that's something they would have to do more against Oklahoma City, because they'll do that with Durant for, 8 to 10 minutes a game. And, that's something they might want to do anyway. See how Serge Ibaka responds to having Matt Barnes on him or something like that. Whatever gets you your guys on the floor is worth trying. Well,
he made, he phased Grant Hill out, which was a tough decision, but something they had to do. And they're going to hit that point with Chauncey in round 2, I think. I just don't think what he gives them and then what his deficiencies are worth playing him over Bledsoe, because athletically, I mean, holy mackerel, is that Oklahoma City team terrifying, athletically especially. And, watching that game last night, it got me thinking, when Ibaka is on, that team is just about unbeatable. Like, if they can get Ibaka up there for that finals against Miami, that could be an epic finals. But the question is, can he get there? You wrote a piece way early in the season that you thought he was basically the key player of this season. You still stand by that?
I mean, I was a little bit facetious there. LeBron.
You know what I mean, though. Yeah. The key X factor.
What you're saying is right. He brings them to another level, and he plays like he did last night. He brings them to another level where you can at least see them threatening Miami. The problem I have looking way ahead to that matchup is that Miami is the only team who can have LeBron and Wade on Westbrook and Durant and just say, we can close these gaps faster than any other team in the league. So all these little plays that you run, the Westbrook Durant pick and roll, the pin downs for Durant, all this stuff that we see coming a mile away, we're too good for those plays. We're too fast for those plays. We're better than everyone else you faced. And there's no fallback in Oklahoma City. If those plays aren't working at their peak level, they can lose. So, but yes, Ibaka, when he plays like he did last night, and boy, does that look like it's going to be a crappy first round series. But yeah, when he plays like that, they're tough.
Poor Houston, they're going to that series thinking we're just going to jack as many threes as we can and just try to get hot and hope some breaks go our way. If they had made half of their threes yesterday, they still would have lost. So now what do you do? It's like, they have 3 of the best 4 guys in this series, and then everybody else from guys 5 through 9 are probably better than our guys. It's too bad. I also, Harden had a really big burden this year, and the last 2 months, it seems like he's wearing down, and I'm sure a little bit of that's physical, but I think a bigger part of that is probably mental, and just that grind of just having to carry a team night after night after night after night for 6 months. If you haven't done it any before, I think it could be pretty debilitating. But
and it doesn't help that now he has to deal with all the "you're back in Oklahoma City" questions. How does that feel? Blah blah blah. He was. I mean, look, defensively he was terrible last night. He got back cut like 4 times for layups. He's just, look, Houston's a nice team. They could have been a frisky first-round team. Now they're not. And, the offseason is already a bigger deal than this playoff series for them.
It's too bad, you look at that Thomas Robinson trade, which we both liked. I feel like they had to do that. But the stuff they gave up for him, just in terms for this series only, he's not even playing. So Patterson at least would have played. He wouldn't have made a difference, but there's still one guy away. And the question to me is, who's that guy? How do you get that guy? What do you give up for him? Do you try to sign him? But they need a second all-star. Like I don't think they can go into another season with asking James Harden to do absolutely everything. I think the parallel would be Dwayne Wade in Miami in the late 2000s before LeBron showed up, where you're just going to wear the guy down. It's just too risky. I was actually thinking about Powell for them. If what people seem to think, like the Lakers this summer would trade Powell for a cheap asset, basically, just to save the luxury tax, because they can't amnesty Kobe. I just think it would be too big of a PR hit.
And Houston can get far enough under the cap doing a couple little things here or there to basically just take Powell and send out a token, asset or two that don't cost much back. And obviously we know that they have looked at Pau Gasol before. Yeah,
and liked him. But let's say like Montehunis, they did that, and that's it. That's you do that, you take a short contract back from the Lakers or whatever, and the Lakers figure out a way where they're flipping Powell for Montehunis, and then they get like a giant $19 million trade exception for that year. It'd be pretty appetizing, especially like when you're talking about the summer of 2014 and LeBron. I mean, this is a total tangent, but it'd be pretty, like, you just put Powell on this Houston team, especially the way he's playing now that Mike D'Antoni isn't burying him 25 feet from the basket, or at least until yesterday. But it'd be the Powell Harden combo would be pretty interesting for me. Quickly, you don't believe in Brooklyn yet?
I mean, it depends what you mean. I don't believe that Brooklyn is a contender. I don't believe that Brooklyn can make any noise against Miami. I think they're a nice team. That's about all I'm prepared to say. You believe more?
I'm not sure. I don't know why I'm like alone on this Brooklyn Island, but I've been watching them the last 5 weeks. I don't know what happened to Deron Williams, and the transformation he had was just incredible. But when you just looking at their team, the way he's playing now, I would say he's a top 7 or top 8 point guard again. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. There's no question.
Joe Johnson, as weird as this sounds, is probably the 4th best shooting guard in the league. Just by default, because that's such a weak position. That position is transformed into, I don't even know what, but he's behind Wade, he's behind Harden, he's behind Kobe. But then any other guy you want to throw out as a 2 guard, he's probably either better than or slightly better than. Can you think of one guy that you would take over him just for one game? Just for one game, boy, I would have to go through the teams. I mean, yeah, I did it. It's Paul you George. Wouldn't. Paul George is a 3 now. He's a 2. Yeah, I don't know. I have him as a small forward, Paul George. Yeah, but, I mean, he's played both when Granger was there, but he's been a 3 all year. Iguodala, what do you count him as? He's been a 2 this year, a 3 in the past. Yeah, I still would rather have Joe Johnson. Well, regardless, so he's in the top 5, and then Lopez is one of the top 4 centers right now. So they have a top 7, a top 5, and a top 4 at 3 really important positions. And it's not like their bench is awful. So I don't know. I keep watching this team and thinking, like, they have 3 guys who can score 30 points in any playoff game. Are we underrating them? Like, the way they started out the season versus the way they played the last 6-7 weeks, maybe they're a little better than we think. I agree with you. I don't think they could beat Miami, but, Hey, look, if Gerald Wallace is alive, and he was alive in game 1. He was totally alive. They're a different team. If he's not alive, they start 2 players that you don't have to guard,
And their bench, although their bench is one of these things where it's like CJ Watson and Andre Blatch are like 50-50 guys. Like they'll have really good games and then they'll do nothing, and then they'll have a really good game and then they'll do nothing. So it just depends on the night that you catch them. And after that, it's Marshawn Brooks, Jerry Stackhouse, Keith Bogans, these guys who don't really do much. My issue with the Nets is they got to prove to me they can defend at a better than average level against, good competition. And we just haven't seen that yet. And until we see that, all those points are nice and they add up to a 45-50 win team, which is very good. There's nothing wrong with that. Brooklyn's a good team.
You look at Lopez. I'm stunned by how much I like Lopez now. I was never a huge fan. I really enjoyed watching him this year. I think he's really crafty in the low post, but you go back to Charlotte and there's a whole famous story about that draft. Charlotte told Lopez they were taking him. And then the pick's going up. It goes to the podium. He's getting ready to stand up. And then they take DJ Augustine. And to this day, nobody knows what happened. It just, for whatever reason, in the final minute, it flipped. And that has to be one of the worst draft moments of the last 15 years. Because even in the moment, it didn't make sense why you would take DJ Augustine over Brook Lopez. But now, looking at what happened to their two careers and then what's happened to Charlotte, and I mean, holy mackerel, was that a disaster?
Yeah, the Thunder almost took Brook Lopez at number 4 when they took Russell Westbrook.
Oh, wow. So
for him to get patched over, for Augustine, who has been basically a disaster for the Pacers this year in a tiny, tiny role, like Ben Hansbrough beat him out for a small, 10-game stretch. Ben Hansbrough was the backup point guard. It is not on the Charlotte Bobcats Wall of Fame, that decision.
It is. I mean, Curry, Johnny Flynn over Curry is right up there too, but the Lopez Augustine thing to me is more indefensible. I mean, this would be a good column, like the top 12. Oh my God, why did they do that draft moments? But like Curry Flynn was the same thing. It's like, what are you doing? Why didn't you take Stephen Curry? Did you watch college basketball last year? There's no question this guy was going to be a good basketball player.
Yeah, it turns out Stephen Curry is awesome.
Yeah. And anybody who watched some of those games that he was, at the worst case scenario, he's going to have 25-foot range. Anything else jump out at you in the weekend other than the 8-0?
It was sort of a bummer in that you just, look, again, it's only been one game and we get 2 more tonight in a couple of the series, but there's just nothing in there to suggest, we spent 5-10 minutes on Celtics Knicks, and if you zoom out, there's just nothing there to suggest any of these teams are going to beat Miami or even push Miami. And in the Western Conference, Oklahoma City is the flip side. I mean, that, it's sort of like, it feels more like a coronation for those two after the first weekend. And, that was pretty much it. There wasn't nothing, again, all the home teams won, all the chalk won, some interesting little things here and there, but, let's see what happens going forward.
How did you feel about Aaron Baines' Hack-a-Shack performance?
Fantastic.
Did you enjoy it?
Fantastic. What's his PER? Do we know? 0? Did he do anything? Do you get minus points for fouls? You do, right?
He played 0 minutes in the box score. He had 0 minutes, 1 foul, and he was -2 because Howard made both free throws. So I think that's the first ever 0-1 -2 I've ever seen.
His playoff PER is -18.2.
Oh, that's trouble.
Yeah.
That's trouble.
I'm working on that's going to be my big column. Is Aaron Baines killing the Spurs?
That was it was on our show on this week. One of the shows this weekend, Jalen was predicting T-Mac was going to have a huge impact on the series, and then we were laughing. They showed T-Mac in street clothes at game 1, and somehow Aaron Baines got the call. I thought the Popovich rope-a-dope with Manu was one of his finest, though. I really did kind of enjoy it. I was totally in the mindset of, oh my God, this team's breaking down. The freaking Lakers with Jody Meeks might be able to win this series. I could see it happening. And then you watch Manu for 2 seconds and it's not. I think we're headed for exactly what we think we're headed for. Miami Knicks, Oklahoma City, San Antonio. The only thing that will change that, if the Celtics can somehow win game 2 in New York City tomorrow night, we can agree they have no chance to win this series unless they win tomorrow.
That offense is not equipped to win 4 games in 5 against a good team. I think you're like the rest of the world. I think we're overlooking the Pacers. I think the Pacers-Knicks is going to be a bloodbath in the second round if that happens, and that the Pacers absolutely have a chance to win that series. Maybe like a 40-60 chance, maybe even 50-50. I don't know. Pacers are really good.
God, something about when you spent time with Frank Vogel, you saw something in his eye. You saw confidence. There was a serenity.
If you have the league's best defense, that's like step 1 to being an actual threat to beat. I mean, it's not like New York is a super team. They're just good. If you have the league's best defense and a decent offense, you could beat a good team 4-7 if you don't have home court advantage. That's all.
I agree. And the thing with the Knicks is, especially if you're doing it the way the Celtics are defending them and you're giving Carmelo his points and just, those threes can go cold for a couple games and that could change anything. I'm not totally sold on the Knicks, but the thing that I think Carmelo is just, if he's going to play like this, that I just have to take them seriously. Just have to, because he's always going to at least have the confidence that he's the best guy on the floor, even if he's playing Miami. And that's half the battle. And that's what I worry about with Indiana if they got there. Like, who on that team is going to look LeBron and Wade in the eye and think like, I'm as good as you guys. You're not intimidating me. I don't care. We're going to take it to you guys. And that's the part that would scare me. Anyway.
And if we get Indiana, New York second round, Melo has done well this season against Indiana. He's shown he can take Paul George down in the post and do some damage. I have to look at his game log. They played 4 times. He might have had a bad game in there somewhere, but he looks very comfortable against Indiana from what I can remember. We'll see. And, poor Hawks. We didn't even talk about the Hawks, but that's life.
It's sad, right? In Rembert Brown's honor, we said not to talk. Last question. Any mascot news from the weekend or no?
Oh, man. Well, I didn't see any mascots. I didn't go to any of the games this weekend because I was just DVR. So, the Knicks don't have a mascot, so I wouldn't have missed anything there. The backflipping dog was kind of fun at the halftime of the Oklahoma City Houston game, but that's a real thing, not a mascot. But that was probably the closest one.
Not only was that fun, but a huge hit with my 2 kids. I paused it, rewound it, and then made my kids come over to watch the walking dog, which somehow not on YouTube. I actually did a Google sweep trying to find out more about the hopping walking poodle, but no information on the internet.
Maybe he's represented by some killer intellectual property lawyers that are just scouring the internet for all his footage.
Wiped out all of the YouTube hits. Yeah, I that's one of the top 3 halftime acts I've seen, along with the lady who catches the dishes.
I'm tired of her. The Red Panda, she's at every
Red Panda.
Game.
And the
she's
two.
If the Red Panda is listening, she's very talented, and like the fans love her. After a while, I want to see something else.
True. Like add something to the routine. Make the dishes hot or something. And then, the 2 guys duo design, the 2 guys who balance each other while they listen to Rocky IV music.
Barkley likes to make some inappropriate comments whenever those guys are on.
Listen, when those guys come out and you're at the game, everybody stops. People don't even go to the concessions. Everybody's riveted by those guys. It's actually amazing to watch in person. And
I agree. It is.
I like those guys. I have the poodle. I would rank the poodle second, duo design third. I still love the panda lady. There's nothing like the panda lady. You're just burned out. You 10 years from now, you'll understand the magic of the panda lady. I think you'll be back.
Someday I'll look back and figure it out.
Zach Lowe, big NBA column for you tomorrow on Grant, and then look forward to reading it. Talk to you soon.
Have fun.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.